Hi guys, Miss Davis here, ready for day 10 of the Anne Frank series. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, a couple of journal entries, I think two or three, to Saturday, March 27th, 1943. Because here's what I'm thinking. I'm looking for a set of entries today that all sort of have a similar theme, a similar thing running through all of them. And so the similar theme I found today is that all of these journal entries really have to deal with news from the outside world. And so here's why that's relevant for me today. They are living in the midst of World War II and kind of like clinging and hanging on to every little piece of news. And during this COVID-19 break, I am really kind of doing the same thing. I am obsessively checking the news outlets, and I'm watching press conferences from the governor and the president, kind of hanging on to every word, like information about when's this going to be over. How are people doing? What is it like in the world out there? Because I really am not out in the world, and that's kind of a similar thing to what's going on in these passages from the Diary of Anne Frank today. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Saturday, the 27th of March, 1943. Dear Kitty, we have finished our shorthand course. Now we are beginning to practice speed. Aren't we getting clever? I must tell you more about my time-killing subjects. I call them such because we've got nothing else to do but make the days go by as quickly as possible, so that the end of our time here comes quickly. I'm mad on mythology, and especially the gods of Greece and Rome. They think here that it's just a passing craze. They've never heard of an adolescent kid of my age being interested in mythology. Well then, I shall be the first. Mr. Van Daan has a cold, or rather, he has a little tickle in his throat. He makes a tremendous fuss about it, gargling with chamomile tea, painting his throat with tincture of myrrh, rubbing eucalyptus all over his chest, his nose, his teeth, and his tongue, and then getting into an evil mood on top of it all. Rauter, one of the German big shots, has made a speech. All Jews must be out of the German-occupied countries before July 1st. Between April 1st and May 1st, the province of Utrecht must be cleaned out, as if the Jews were cockroaches. Between May 1st and June 1st, the provinces of North and South Holland. These wretched people are sent to filthy slaughterhouses like a herd of sick, neglected cattle. But I won't talk about it. I only get nightmares from such thoughts. One good little piece of news is that the German Department of the Labor Exchange has been set on fire by saboteurs. A few days after, the registrar's office went the same way. Men in German police uniforms gagged the guards and managed to destroy important papers. Yours, Anne. So, again, here's news from the outside world creeping in, their normal everyday stuff, learning lessons, and, Mr. Van Daan having a cold and being a big baby about it. And then these decrees that kind of come down one after the other in rapid succession of what Jews must do now. And boy, that's something that I really am feeling sort of, what's next. And then this bit of hope from these acts of rebellion against the Germans. So blowing up places where the German central offices are, and destroying important papers of the Germans is like an act of resistance. They see that as like a rebel cry, a battle cry. So that's all really good news for the resistance. And so, sorry, I gotta move some of my stuff here. The light. Oh, the lighting is awful. Okay. So the next journal entry is Saturday, March 27th, 1943. Dear Kitty. Oh, yeah, no, sorry, I just read that one. Thursday, April 1st, 1943. Dear Kitty, I'm really not April fooling you the date, but the opposite. Today I can easily quote the saying, misfortunes never come singly. To begin with, Mr. Kufius, the one who always cheers us up, has had a hemorrhage of the stomach, and he's got to stay in bed for at least 3 weeks. Secondly, Eli has the flu. Thirdly, Mr. Vossen is going to the hospital next week. He has probably got an abdominal ulcer. And fourthly, some important business conferences, the main point of which Daddy had discussed in detail with Mr. Kufius, were due to be held. And now there isn't time to explain everything thoroughly to Mr. Crayler. The gentleman who had been expected duly arrived. Even before they came, Daddy was trembling with anxiety as to how the talks would go. If only I could be there, if only I was downstairs, he cried. Why don't you go and lie on the floor with one ear pressed? Then you'll be able to hear everything. Daddy's face cleared, and at 10:30 yesterday morning, Margot and Daddy, 2 ears are better than one, took up their positions on the floor. The talks were not finished in the morning, but by the afternoon, Daddy was not in a fit state to continue the listening campaign. He was half paralyzed for remaining in so unusual and uncomfortable a position. I took his place at 2:30, as soon as we heard voices in the passage. Margot kept me company. The talk at times was so long-winded and boring that quite suddenly I fell asleep on the cold, hard linoleum floor. Margot did not dare to touch me for fear that they might hear us. Talking was out of the question. I slept for a good half hour and then woke up with a shock, having forgotten every word of the important discussions. Luckily, Margot had paid more attention. Yours, Anne. Okay, so this is a thing which I'm really identifying with today. Misfortunes never come singly. Oh my, for those, who are like in and around my area, who are more familiar with me, and, the region that we're from, boy, have we had a hard week. My goodness. Lots of misfortunes seem to keep piling one on top of another, boom, boom, boom. And things, while this whole coronavirus outbreak is happening and all our schedules are disrupted as is, and now, these like awful things are happening sort of one on top of another, totally outside of our control. And the idea of Daddy wanting to be in the meeting and not being able to go downstairs and just be there, that's hitting home for me today too, because there's a lot of things I want to do. I want to teach my classes. I want to see my kids. I want to go live my life and do the thing that I want to do, and I cannot. So I'm sort of like pressing an ear against the floor, hoping to catch, bits and pieces of my real life happening without me. And so this whole journal entry I'm really identifying with a bit about misfortunes coming and never coming singly, and feeling like I'm missing something. The next journal entry is dated Friday, April 2nd, 1943. Dear Kitty, I've got another terrible black mark against my name. I was lying in bed yesterday evening waiting for Daddy to come and say my prayers with me and wish me good night, when Mummy came into my room, sat on my bed, and asked very nicely, Anne, Daddy can't come yet. Shall I say your prayers with you tonight? No, Mummy, I answered. Mummy got up, paused by my bed for a moment, and walked slowly towards the door. Suddenly, she turned around, and with a distorted look on her face said, I don't want to be cross. Love cannot be forced. There were tears in her eyes as she left the room. I lay still in bed, feeling at once that I had been horrible to push her away so rudely. But I knew, too, that I couldn't have answered differently. It simply wouldn't work. I felt sorry for Mummy. Very, very sorry, because I'd seen for the first time in my life that she does mind my coldness. I saw the look of sorrow on her face when she spoke of love not being forced. It's hard to speak the truth, yet it is the truth. She herself has pushed me away. Her tactless remarks and her crude jokes, which I don't find at all funny, have now made me insensitive to any love from her side. Just as I shrink at her hard words, so did her heart when she realized the love between us was gone. She cried half the night and hardly slept at all. Daddy doesn't look at me, and if he does for a second, then I read in his eyes the words, How can you be so unkind? How can you bring yourself to cause your mother such sorrow? They expect me to apologize, but this is something I cannot apologize for, because I spoke the truth, and Mummy will have to know it sooner or later anyway. I seem, and indeed am, indifferent both to Mummy's tears and Daddy's looks, because for the first time they are both aware of something which I have always felt. I can only feel sorry for Mummy, who has now had to discover that I have adopted her own attitude. For myself, I remain silent and aloof. I shall not shrink from the truth any longer, because the longer it is put off, the more difficult it will be for them when they do hear it. Yours, Anne. Okay, so Anne is really hard-hearted in this journal entry. There's a lot of past feelings of angst and discomfort, and it just seems to me that if the two of them could sit down and talk this out, that they might find that they're not so far apart anyway, but they're both living in this crazy mixed up time. I'm sure they both have their own things that they're dealing with emotionally, and there seems to be this big gap and divide between them. Anne feels that she's all alone, and I don't know what Mommy's feeling, but maybe just loss of a relationship or the potential that could be there. And so in this time where, there's been a lot of grief and tragedy around in my community lately, I would urge you to reach out to other people. If you're feeling lost and alone and kind of hard-hearted, like Anna's in this particular journal entry, that you make an effort to reach out to those loved ones. You are loved by more people than you know, and that you don't have to shoulder anything alone. I think that this is maybe a mistake of Anne's, an understandable and common mistake amongst teenagers and young people, to shut down and think that they're not understood and that they're not really loved, and so squirrel themselves away. I just wish Anne would reach out to her mom in this time and not read so much into their looks and maybe into their jokes, and see a way to bridge the gap. So that's an important lesson for us all, that we can reach out to other people. And if that person is me, you know my digits, you know where I am, you reach out to me or another trusted adult or somebody, but you are never alone. Next journal entry. Tuesday, the 27th of April, 1943. Dear Kitty, such quarrels that the whole house thunders. Mummy and I, the Van Dans and Daddy, Mummy and Mrs. Van Daan, everyone is angry with everyone else. Nice atmosphere, isn't it? Anne's usual list of failings have been brought out again and fully ventilated. Mr. Vossen is already in the Bimingathis hospital. Mr. Kufius is up again, the hemorrhage having stopped sooner than usual. He told us at the registrar's office received additional damage from the fire service, who, instead of just squelching the flames, soaked the whole place with water. I'm glad. The Carlton Hotel is smashed to bits. 2 British planes loaded with incendiary bombs fell right on top of the Officersheim. The whole Witzestratzingel corner is burned down. The air raids on German towns are growing in strength every day. We don't have a single quiet night. I've got dark rings under my eyes from lack of sleep. Our food is miserable. Dry bread and coffee substitute for breakfast. Dinner, spinach or lettuce for a fortnight on end. Potatoes, 20 centimeters long and tasting sweet and rotten. Whoever wants to follow a slimming course should stay in the secret annex. They complain bitterly upstairs, but we don't regard it such a tragedy. All the men who fought in 1940 or who were mobilized have been called up to work for the Führer as prisoners of war. Suppose they're doing that as a precaution against invasion. Yours, Anne. So I'm going to roll onto the next journal entry, follow hot on its heels. Saturday, May 1st, 1943. Dear Kitty, I just think of how we live here. I usually come to the conclusion that it's a paradise compared with how other Jews who are not in hiding must be living. Even so, later on, when everything is normal again, I shall be amazed to think that we, who were so spick and span at home, have sunk to such a low level. By this I mean that our manners have declined. For instance, ever since we've been here, we've had one oilcloth on our table, which, owing to so much use, is not the cleanest. Admittedly, I often try to clean it with a dirty dishcloth, which is more whole than cloth. The table doesn't do us much credit either, in spite of hard scrubbing. The Van Dans have been sleeping on the same flannelette sheet the whole winter. One can't wash it here because the soap powder we get on the ration is not sufficient, and besides, it's not good enough. Daddy goes about in frayed trousers, and his tie is beginning to show signs of wear, too. Mummy's corsets have split today and are too old to be repaired, while Margot goes about in a brassiere 2 sizes too small for her. Mummy and Margot have managed the whole winter with 3 vests between them, and mine are so small that they don't even reach my tummy. Certainly there are all things which can be overcome, but still, I sometimes realize with a shock, how are we, now going about in worn things from my pants down to Daddy's shaving brush, how are we ever going to get back our pre-war standards? They were banging away so much last night that 4 times I gathered all my belongings together. Today I have packed a suitcase with the most necessary things for an escape, but Mommy rightly says, where will you escape to? The whole of Holland is being punished for the strikes which have been going on in many parts of the country. Therefore a state of siege has been declared, and everyone gets 1 butter coupon less. What naughty little children. Yours, Anne. So we're almost out of time for the day. So again, the condition of everything is deteriorating, both inside and outside the annex. And the war, again, is not close to over. So those are my thoughts for the day today. Hope you enjoyed them. Again, have a great day. And if you haven't started a journal yet, what are you waiting for? See you later. Bye-bye.